Hi, Tom.
Hello, Jace. All right, mate?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, special 10 by 6 this week. It's purely a response to the interview that you and I did with the North Dorset MP, Simon Hoare, earlier this week, which you can see on the YouTube channel and in various articles that Dorset I have published. What we really wanted to do very, very briefly is just to pick up on some of the things that Simon said, some of the issues that he raised, and just at the time we didn't feel it was necessarily appropriate to get into that kind of debate with him, but I think now we need just to possibly set the record straight or highlight certain things. So I'll let you kick off, Tom.
Well, for me, Jace, thanks. And yeah, for me, it was a fascinating discussion and interview with Simon Hoare. And obviously the focus was on the couple of times recently where he's voted against the government and against the whip. And that was interesting to discover why and his thoughts on that. And we appreciate him coming on. And for me, the biggest thing was I obviously raised this issue, which, you know, viewers hopefully will have seen the interview and know what I'm talking about here, that there's this staggeringly corrupt system in our House of Commons, very clearly and obviously corrupt, whereby right up unto the House of Commons, at all other levels of politics, councils, etc., people declare if they have a conflict of interest or a potential one, and then they're not allowed to take part in debates and votes on that topic. However, it's completely different in the House of Commons, where they have the members' register of interest, and all they have to do is refer the speaker to that, and then carry on and debate and carry on and vote on something where they clearly have or potentially have a conflict of interest. It's staggering and leads clearly to an awful lot of corruption. And, you know, vested interests, big business particularly, buying our politicians and their votes. And it's in my mind, one of the biggest things that's wrong with our so-called democracy. One of the things that makes the idea that we have a parliamentary democracy a bit of a joke. So it was staggering because I raised that, and I appreciate very much that Simon took that point on board and said he was going to email Chris Bryant, the Labour, I think he's chair of the Standards Board, and to discuss and explore that. If that led to some kind of change, that would be rather extraordinary and quite a coup for Dorset I. And the whole of the public should be clamouring for that. People should be writing to their MPs and talking to others about it and making it a huge issue, because it is one of the biggest issues that we have in Parliament in terms of corruption. But it's also, isn't it staggering that Simon said he hadn't thought of that before, and it's extraordinary. And you know, I wonder how many other MPs hadn't thought of it before. You know, Simon said he was a councillor. He was aware of, obviously, when he was a councillor, he had to declare interests and not participate in debates and votes. So I don't know whether it's something that any MPs have raised before, have tried to change before, and met opposition to any change. I'm guessing that has happened, but anyway, but it was just fascinating, and well, who knows? Maybe it'll lead to something, but it would probably only lead to something if a large number of people, you know, said that it needs to and campaign for it.
Yeah, I'm not hopeful. I'm not hopeful.
Not holding your breath.
Until I see the reality, I know I won't be holding my breath on this one. I think we've already seen the fact that the Labour Party have been condemning Conservative Party in the last 24 hours, the fact that they've watered down the methodology for going forward in terms of trying to find a solution to all of this. And I just don't see the Conservatives enabling an opportunity for your idea to come to fruition, because I just don't see it's in their interests. And unfortunately, as we know with many MPs, most of which are on the right, they tend to vote for their own interests. My focus, my response, if you like, to Simon is more around his use of language. I mean, he went in quite forcefully in terms of, you know, the left, and straight away, well, unfortunately, it gets my shackles, because instead of sticking to facts, instead of bringing evidence to the table, and not mattering what your political allegiance. You look at the evidence as a lawyer would, if you like, and you make a judgment based on the evidence that you have in front of you. So obviously the important thing is to bring as much evidence to the table as possible so that you can make a more informed decision. So when he talks about the left, and in this relationship, he was relating directly to the vote on landlords and the powers that they would have over tenants. And I don't actually remember, but he also very clearly jumped in and said about, are you talking about politicians as landlords? And it didn't even cross my mind. This piece of legislation was about all landlords and their relationship with tenants. And the fact that he'd just become transfixed on this idea that we were just talking about politicians, I thought that was extremely worrying, because when they all went through and cast their votes, you would hope that they would be understanding the nature of what it is like for tenants across the country living in accommodation, living in houses and flats, etc. And they would have a holistic understanding of these experiences, and it wouldn't just be about them and their £1 million plus properties and who they're renting it out to, because that is just a small atom compared to, as I say, the overall experiences of the population. So in itself, that was extremely concerning. And the other thing that really got me was when he talked about the left, and he uses that tone which is so disparaging. And of course, he went straight into an attack on Jeremy Corbyn, who hasn't been leader of the Labour Party for 2.5 years, but 1.5 years, but that's besides the point. But the issue with having such a strong, I think, anger towards the left is they tend to forget something. And two things that I want to highlight here very, very briefly. Firstly, they forget that the bailout in 2008 of the capitalist economy by the state was in itself, when you look at economic modeling from the left, it was about the taxpayer bailing out these casino financiers who were seeking to make as much money for themselves out of greed. But instead of them paying the penalty and facing the verdicts and then finding solutions amongst themselves to pay back everything that they stole, it was left to us across the world to pay aggregated trillions of pounds and dollars in order to make up for their mess. That comes from the left. Without the left, capitalism would be dead and buried. And another thing as well, Tom, is again this nuance about the left, is the millions of large, medium and small businesses that rely upon the state, income support, family tax credit, housing benefit to supplement the earnings of those people who are paid puny wages, so that a small number of people can get extremely wealthy, shareholders, etc. Again, it's left-wing modeling that suggests that the only way the system stays in place is by them being bailed out by Social Security, the welfare state, day in, day out. So how dare they show such ignorance and blindness and hostility in order to make their political point, when they obviously are extremely ignorant of reality?
Yeah, absolutely, Jace. Two very well made points there. And yes, arguably, the welfare state is subsidizing a lot of very wealthy employers who are choosing to pay their employees poverty wages below the national living wage. So yeah, two very well made points. Yeah, absolutely agree with those.
And I'm sure that we could continue for a while, but we do need to keep this nice and brief and to the point. And I'm hoping that viewers will at least enter into what we have said with an open mind, because there's obviously far too many people who go in, they've already painted a picture on the wall and they're not prepared to look at anybody else's. And I think that is, again, a staggeringly bad thing for democracy.
Could I just add, before we wrap up, to your second point there, there's this notion, a very realistic, truthful notion, that what we're seeing now is what's become known as socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor. So wealthy people, including big business owners and corporations, are getting vast subsidies, taxpayers' money, handouts, and whereas ordinary people, workers, poor people, are getting shafted, are in a competitive system that includes, punitive punishments, whereas the narrative is that socialism is about handouts, actually what we're seeing under the capitalist system is vast, enormous handouts to the rich in subsidies, and of course more recently in contracts given out clearly corruptly to the families and the mates and the donors of those in power. At the same time as poor people, wages are frozen, welfare is cut, services that support people's lives are cut, and more and more people living lives of poverty and degradation. We have a system where, socialism, as in financial support, system of financial support, is given to the very rich and not the poor who need it.
Yeah, and just to finish off with an analogy, I think, Tom, it's like, for me, capitalism has become that person who drinks one bottle of brandy after another, smokes 100 cigarettes a day, injects themselves with whatever thing that they can find, collapses to the floor, and socialism is the defibrillator. It's constantly having to be there to revive them so they can just continue to do what they were doing before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, you take care. Thank you again.
Fascinating, yeah. Thank you. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope everyone has had a chance to see the interview with Simon. It was really fascinating, and we'll see what comes of it.
And please subscribe to our channel, folks. Okay, the more the merrier. Take care. See you next week, mate.
All right. Cheers, Chase. Bye, everyone.